Welcome to the Smart CEO Smart Chat. I am Kyra Hardwick, and I am thrilled to be here with you. Thanks for tuning in. We hope that this episode will be an incredible influence on the way that you do the work that you do every day. So whether you're a smart CEO, working from home, working from the office, simply navigating your life and family, whatever it is, today's the day you made a great decision to tune into our podcast and get this smart talk. So let's dig in.
Welcome back to yet another episode of the Smart Talk podcast. I am today's host, Alena Conley, and I'm the head of learning and impact here at the Kyra Company. And I have the pleasure of welcoming for the first time to the show, Dr. Lomax R. Campbell from Third Eye Network. Welcome to the show, Dr. Lomax.
Thanks for having me here. It's exciting to be with the Kyra Company again, and I know we're going to have a great conversation.
Absolutely. These last couple of months have just been a blast having you as part of the cohort. You have so much knowledge, so much experience. And now that I get you in this room, I get to ask you all the questions that I never really had the chance to because I couldn't show favoritism.
I wasn't even aware that you wanted to ask me questions in the cohort. So this is exciting to even know that.
It's like we got to get through so much material. But once you start getting your opinions out there, it's like we could go all day, right? But I can't. I'm like a natural follow-up kind of person, and a follow-up to that, right? But I can't because then I have to stay on task. So let's just first start with the beginning, right? Because I think that what I appreciate about your journey is that it's academic heavy. You kind of have an academia background. You think about stuff very high level when it comes to our macro environment and ecosystem building. And I was very intrigued by that. And so talk to me a little bit about, even if you go as far back as being a kid, right? Because we think a lot of times with entrepreneurship, those signs show up, right? Like I think I can think back to my first business. I was telling my daughter the other day, like, girl, I used to sell paintings to my family members. I used to put on Mariah Carey's Christmas concert in my living room and charge everybody $1 coming in. You kind of have that hustler mentality, even though we didn't call it that back then. Yeah. And so what were some of the early signs for you that when you look back now, you're like, man, I've kind of always been this person?
No, it's funny. I remember waking up one night in the middle of the night. My mom was up watching TV. It could have been 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning. And I sat in the couch with her and she was watching the show. And some guy pulled up to a building and walked in. He had like a nice car, flashy suit. And he walked in very confidently. And some woman goes, "Who's the kid? Who's the young kid coming in here?" And the guy nudges her and goes, "The boss's newly minted MBA." And I remember saying, "Mama, what's an MBA?" And she said, "It's a college degree, baby. It stands for Masters of Business Administration." I was 12 and I said, "Mom, I want an MBA." Because I saw this guy pull up in this red BMW with a suit on, going to his job in this beautiful office. And then I remember movies like Boomerang, Eddie Murphy, being the agency executive.
I thought you were going to start talking about first, because I feel like that's everybody's like, that's going to be me one day.
And that's exactly, but so I saw Boomerang first, but, and then of course, like movies like Strictly Business with Wayman and Tommy Davidson's character. And I just remember just being attracted to the idea of building things. But to be candid, my first job was working for a State Farm insurance agency as a office assistant when I was 16, and my first paid, like my first regular job. And the Black man who owned that particular branch is now my fraternity brother in several organizations, Alpha Phi Alpha, Prince Hall Masons to be a couple of them, Sigma Pi Phi fraternity. And he owned his branch and has run it since the 80s. And so I just always have been around entrepreneurs. When I was 13, I was a part of a boys' step team in middle school, and we went to this place called Afina Acoma African Imports and studied capoeira. A year later, I was the assistant instructor. And the next year, I had a grant with our community action agency, Action for a Better Community, to teach that same group of kids that came after me capoeira out of Afina Acoma. And I did that for a couple of years. And so I was already enterprising. I think I was making $50 an hour as a 14, 15-year-old. And then a child care development center was paying me $35 an hour to teach toddlers and young kids when I was, again, a teenager, capoeira, which is an Afro-Brazilian martial arts form. But when it really congealed for me was when I graduated from high school. I told my family, my mentors, my village that I wasn't going straight to college. I was going to start this music group with some of my classmates. It was called A Star Music Group. And we had this whole vision of Hot Ice Productions was our production label and Zenoj Publishing, and we were going to own everything except distribution. Of course, this is the 90s going into the early 2000s, and everybody was so disappointed. But I fell forward in that venture because there was a photographer we did a photo shoot with back then, and his name was Danny. He owned a company called Third Eye Photography. And when that venture failed, I ran into Danny while working at Foot Locker in 2003 in one of our plazas at the time. He was working for a security company. And I told him, listen, the business didn't work out. I'm going to go to college for marketing because I discovered marketing trying to grow my first company. And he said, listen, I need marketing for the photo company. It was his side thing. He was a military guy and security officer on the side while also running this photo company. He said, I need marketing. Let's trade. I'll teach you photography and you can market my company. Literally 6 months later, I shot my first wedding, and he was so impressed with the work that the next month we filed paperwork to be partners. And by the way, that wedding was $350. They still owe me $75. So if I see that couple, we're going to have to holler at each other. That was 24 years ago now. But the point is, that's what got me into the business I'm in now, because I helped grow Third Eye Photography into what's now Third Eye Network. And Danny at the time moved on eventually from the venture, and I closed the business in 2012. But from 2003 to 2012, I was in school while running Third Eye Photography, Forte Graphics, Third Eye Network, Marketing and Management Solutions. And from associates to bachelor's to master's, everything I learned in class, anything I can glean from my textbooks and assignments and the networking I was doing with staff, faculty, and students, I was applying it to my business. And so that's why when you said I have a very academic or structured, rigorous approach to the work that we do at Third Eye Network, that's where it comes from. In 2012, when I closed, I went to work for a community college, the one that I started at as an associate's degree student. I was teaching first computer-related curricula and then moved into a vice president's office as a marketing specialist. So now getting more domain professional experience separate from my business, and then became his assistant. In the division that he formed, it was economic development and innovative workforce services at the community college I was working at. So I was now learning workforce development, economic development, while also having been an entrepreneur and also teaching, right? And I was teaching at another college too. After about 8 years, I got picked up by the city of Rochester, where I became the director of the mayor's office of community wealth building. We were the second office named that for community wealth building in the country, following behind Richmond, Virginia. And in that role for the next 3.5 years, we helped spin off our Economic Development Corporation, created a $15 million revolving loan fund, a $13.5 million revolving loan fund, was providing direct technical assistance to small businesses, but also convening an entire ecosystem of entrepreneur support organizations. So by the time I vested in the state pension and COVID had come, and I was preparing to go back out on my own and relaunch Third Eye Network, I did so now with an entrepreneur-led workforce and economic development bent to the marketing and management consulting company that I had cultivated over the prior 20 years. And so for the last 6 years, that's what I built from. We're in year 6 since relaunching, with a staff of 6 and a network of about 40 organizations that we partner with across the country.
Wow. As I'm listening to your story, I keep thinking about that Dr. Seuss book that a lot of people get during graduation, Oh, the Places You'll Go, right? And I feel like that's been
Wow.
even my own life in the last 6 months, because through the Kyra company, we have so many different partners. 2 months ago, I was in the middle of an oil rig. A week after that, I was in a suite at a Boston game during finals. And then last week, I'm a contributor for USA Today. And
Yes.
we have this really dynamic community like 40 miles outside of Atlanta called Serenbe, which they grow their own food. They have their own architect. It's just like this whole other world. And I'm thinking, in a matter of 3 months, I live different versions of who I am, right? And so when I'm listening to your story, what I appreciate about it is it feels like there is this authentic pull towards things that matter to you, things that feel very aligned, even if they don't make sense. And then they kind of gel together. And so now, as a parent, I heard you when you said everybody was so upset, right? And I think that as a parent now, I've been making a very conscious effort to try to curate my children's lives and give them experiences. But to some degree, it's kind of like you don't know where they're going to end up. Based on what you're saying, it feels like there was a level of exposure that really created a very dynamic human being, right? And so if you have to think about, I know you have a 2-year-old, right? Think about how you would take some of your wins and positioning that maybe your family cultivated for you and strategically create your child's life, right? And we know that she gonna call you one day like, Daddy, I'm not doing that, right? But if you could take that approach when thinking about how you build a life for someone that you have a little bit more autonomy over right now, what does that look like for you?
Yeah, I'm appreciative of that question because my wife and I have that discussion a lot. And even before we had Aja, my daughter's name is Aja Zola. That's her first name. And before we had her, we talked heavily about what kind of parents we wanted to be and how did we want to set them up to make full development and live a fulfilling life. And we're also historians, right? We study culture, we study Black culture and history as part of my upbringing. And so once upon a time, we didn't tell our kids to go to college only. We didn't tell our kids to go to a trade only. We told them to do both, right? Because you always want to have things to fall back on. And so the way we've talked about raising and rearing our family, our children, was that we want to make sure that all of them are encouraged to have a traditional academic path, a trade, an art form that they stay consistent with, even though they may explore different ones, and then investments. That way, the investments can thrive when other things may not, but it's always in the background, accruing and building. The art form may be a release or it could be a lifestyle. If they're a classically trained pianist, harpist, classically trained dancer, or vocalist, or whatever the art is, painting, fine art, sculpting, but that may be paired with being, if they're a painting person, they may pair that with being a carpenter in their trade and an architect by academic cultivation, right? And so, because of that, they have a variety of transferable skills. That means they can always have interesting conversations because you're going to relate to somebody on one of those levels and they can always feed themselves. And they also know that they're not just planning for today, they're planning for today, tomorrow, and the next generation. And so coming up holistically like that in our African centeredness is important to me and my family.
So how does that approach then show up in your business?
Absolutely. So, for starters, we have sayings that I would commonly say it takes a network to do work that matters, which is technically both our tagline, it takes a network, and our mission statement to do work that matters. I would often lament that we only go where we're invited because I'm not trying to convince people that they need support. We position ourselves as a growth partner to organizations and networks that need our services. And so, one of the things that we say in the context of our ecosystem building messaging, our call out is we help the people who help the people. Because so often resources and thought leadership goes into the people that the people who help the people are often only extracted from, not invested in. They're not fully able to be resourced to perform, right? Think about how many grants the Kyra company might have gone after that was really to run a program, but not to cover operating expenses, other than that 5 to 20, 10% indirect. So who invests in those people's professional development? Who builds or expands their capacity by being shoulder to shoulder with them, thinking through the strategy and executing the work? We are. So if you see value in that, let's talk, right? So that's how it shows up. Also, too, I've built a company with my team where they have the option of being fully remote. We work from 10 to 6 Eastern time because we do work in the Midwest and the West Coast. So we want to be able to show up for other time zones and be cognizant of the fact that even within those that are on the East Coast that work for me, they're able to take care of things that are only open from 9 to 5 because they don't start work officially until 10 o'clock, right? Similarly, if they need to flex their schedule, understanding community, right? We say it takes a network, but that comes off of the notion that it takes a village, right? My team knows that as we build subsidiary companies or divisions of Third Eye Network, and they've worked with us at least 5 years, they have the opportunity to co-invest in those subsidiaries with us. So they have a vested interest in the scale and growth of the organization. So in Japan, they'd call that a kiretsu. In African parlance, you can call that a susu, or more broadly in Pan-African practice, you call it cooperative economics. We own this together. And so literally in a number of ways, these Pan-African values and principles are entrenched in the making and build out and the very name Third Eye Network.
So let's back up, because I know people are like leaning on the edge of their seat. What does this company do, right? We didn't even cover that. So
We just dove in.
Tell our listeners what you all do at Third Eye Network.
Yeah, so we tell people that Third Eye Network, we describe ourselves as a multifaceted, network-driven consultancy that partners with organizations and networks to solve social and economic problems. We do that two ways. We do it either by doing traditional project engagements. So that could be a contract with a city or a state or a foundation or a financial institution to do an economic plan, recovery plan, to do a needs assessment, those types of things. Or we partner with them through an ongoing managed services model. We have 5 areas of practice that we work. The first one is research and development. So as I mentioned, that could be a needs assessment project. That could be a playbook creation where you're distilling best practices into some sort of playbook. That could be a discovery report where you say, I know there's an issue, but I don't know what they are. So any kind of research and development projects, which precedes planning. The second thing we do is the actual plan. So we take that discovery report or that needs assessment or the findings from a program evaluation report with recommendations, and we take those recommendations and flesh them out into actionable plans. And so a report that had 15 recommendations, the client may come back and hire us to say, we want you to flesh out 2 of them as a plan, as a detailed action plan, and then maybe even move to helping to implement, which is our third thing. So I said we do 5 things. So from research development to planning, the third one, organizational resilience, is the practice area. This is where we get into implementation. And that can either be on a project basis or an ongoing managed services basis, whereas the first 2 things are just project basis, because normally you don't need ongoing research or you don't need ongoing planning. The fourth thing we do is marketing and design, which takes us back to Third Eye Photography and Forte Graphic days. So I have a design team in-house. I have a marketing and design manager and a full-time graphic designer. And literally, we will do personas, we would rebrand, we would do websites, we would do social media management. We would design all the marketing assets and the messaging strategy. We would do press releases, all the things that comes with the concept of marketing and design. That's our 4th area of practice. And then, of course, measurement of the effectiveness of those campaigns or strategies. And then the 5th and final thing is ecosystem building, which takes all of the work I just described, and now you're doing that with a group of organizations. So let's say you had a collective impact network of 10 agencies that were funded by a foundation or a federal government agency or a state agency or even a local government network. And they said, listen, we've been trying to support the workforce, or we've been trying to support entrepreneurs, or we've been trying to support homeowners, or we're trying to help elevate AI adoption within our region, or we want to support financial literacy among women and minority community members. Whatever the collective impact agenda is, we have trust issues, we have funding gaps, we have a lot of duplication. Some people have bad history, some people have great history, some people are new players, and all of us have capacity gaps. And we need a backbone organization to come in and help our organization network kick into gear. That's the ecosystem building practice. It's where Third Eye Network is a pioneer in the practice of ecosystem building and the advancement of it as a field, where hopefully one day you'll see a profession for ecosystem builders. We've been doing that work from day one, starting back when I was at the city.
Yeah. So when I hear you, I have this vision of kind of like this very robust global organization with multiple lines of business, right? But when we think about the advice that business gurus give. It's sometimes niche down, pick one thing, right? If I was listening to you, I'd be like, hey, you need to really lean into ecosystem building because that sounds like fresh and new. So I would love to hear from your perspective. Why do you keep this breadth of services versus going deep on one? What's your strategic approach around that?
Yeah. So we are deep in marketing and we're deep in ecosystem building.
Okay.
However, ecosystem building contracts are not a dime a dozen. You don't see one every day, right? We responded to an RFP with our network partner, SourceLink, about a year ago. The state of Kansas was looking for an ecosystem building team to build a strategy for the entire state of Kansas. That project was never awarded to anybody, as an example. 3 years ago, I think the Philadelphia Industrial Development Corporation had an RFP to identify and adopt a platform to centralize all of their resource partners on, and then be able to help implement once the platform is established, help build the momentum in implementing the actual post-platform adoption strategy. We were a finalist, but we weren't selected. Those projects don't come out every day. Under the prior administration, there was the Community Navigator pilot program that the Small Business Administration did. It was a $100 million opportunity, and 50 plus communities were awarded that money. Rochester was one of the recipients of $1 million over 2 years. And we helped write that proposal and got that contract for our client and helped them administer it. So for that, because you can't build an entire business off of something that's sporadic, it's not smart to just go deep into that. So right now we have a symposium, an AI symposium on Tuesday, where we're partnering with International Economic Development Council as a part of a 3-part series. That's an ecosystem building project. And it's funded by a city grant that one of our local entrepreneur support organizations receives. So we're doing that work, but you don't build an entire business around that because it's not a viable business model by itself, right? The managed services was designed to offset the ups and downs of being a contractor. Because as you know personally, Alena, when you get a contract, that contract may be for 9 months, but it took you 9 to 18 months to score that contract, right? Even if it was $250,000, next year you got to do it all over again.
Yeah.
And so you have to be able to float those expenses until those projects pay out. So truly, that vertically integrated supply chain, our mix of capabilities, just following along from the research project through implementation.
Yeah. That's helpful. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about your experience in the cohort, right? And so I think that I remember when we first did your onboarding, I think I probably called Kyra. So there's this guy who basically builds strategic plans, right? And for those of you all listening, the output of the 8 weeks is essentially a strategic plan. And so I was thinking, okay, I don't know if he's on the right side of the coin here because he could do this. And so I would love to kind of hear from your perspective, because we have so many talented business owners who truly do come in with a high level of expertise. What type of value would a program like this add to someone who kind of already knows what they're doing?
A lot, because it wasn't just about the academic training, right? It was also the network. It was the things that you might have missed or not focused on prior to enrolling in a program like this. It's the fact that being committed to a program like this forces you to allocate time to focus on what you know you need to do, right? As a marketing and design agency, which is one of our facets, we're the last people to update our own website or to do our current brochure because we're working on yours, right? Or trying to pitch to someone else that we can help them do theirs. And so literally, it's the notion of the emperor has no shoes on. And so for me, we started working on our next cycle of our strategic plan literally a year ago in June. In fact, I was driving to the Global Entrepreneurship Congress in Indianapolis from Rochester, New York, which was an 11-hour drive, and literally was on a call with my marketing and design manager who was separately traveling to the same event. And we were starting to talk through, what does our plan need to entail? And we do this every 3 years, new plans. So this is our second cycle since relaunching. We weren't able to finish our plan. And it had been, by the time we learned about the SmartCEO's Accelerator, it had been about 8 months that we were working on it and had even done a staff retreat. And I realized something's missing. And when the opportunity came to come into this program, we were fleshing out our managed services arm of our work, just because, as I mentioned, being a consultant with project-based work is up, down, up, down, up, down. And with this current administration and all of the anti-DEI sentiments, even when we're not walking around saying, look, I'm a MBE certified business, I'm Black, I look Black. And so you're always going to be perceived by some potential buyers as a diversity hire, even when you're not angling for that, right? And so I was questioning, how do we weave a strategy into our plan, or a vision into our plan that's feasible, that diversifies us away from just doing contract work, where managed service subscriptions would offset that. So the program that the Kyra company offers came right on time, because we had soft launched it at late January, applied to the SmartCEO's Accelerator in late February, and said, we'll use this 8 weeks to explore what infrastructure do we need to put in place to effectively roll out and administer and sustain a managed service model alongside a project-based model of delivering the same skill sets and the same services, just different to different core customers, so that you diversify your revenue and mitigate the risk of being one or the other, right? The other piece was specific programming was new to me. I just started taking AI seriously back in August of last year. Almost a year later, we're running an AI symposium for small businesses. Who does that, right? I'm a power user of it, and it's largely because the Smart CEO Accelerator program introduced us to platforms like Notebook LM, talk to us about things like AI policies and cybersecurity and information security policies as part of your infrastructure that you can leverage to go after enterprise clients, mid-cap, mid-tier companies that do at least $10 million to $100 million in revenue. I wasn't thinking like that a year ago. Do you understand what I'm saying? I thought we were a government, foundation, nonprofit contractor. We didn't serve directly small businesses because they couldn't afford our starting point, which is about 50K on up. And we were trying to strategically stay away from the waters where we would compete against, let's say, the McKinseys and the Deloittes and the Booz Allen Hamiltons, because we know those are 300,000 person companies, right? They have the scale, the infrastructure. So trying to find that middle space, it wasn't until this program that we realized we could focus on growth stage small businesses and mid-cap companies, and again, diversify ourselves away from our traditional competition. And lastly, just to circle back on your point about why not niche down and just be a planning agency, or just a research organization, or just a marketing agency, I would say because the competitive landscape in just being one of those things makes it unattractive to just be restricted to one of those things. How many people, every Tom, Dick, and Harry, whether it's with AI or because they're a freelancer, will say, I can do your social media strategy and your implementation for you. And they're going to be inexpensive because they have no overhead. They're not looking to be an employer. And the truth is, it's a hustle for them. Whereas we're like, no, how many Black-owned, multifaceted consulting firms you know that do $10 to $50 million a year and employ people that look like you and me? I want to be one of those. I don't want to be a freelancer. I want to be able to get sick and know that my company is still running and payroll is still being met. I want to be able to actually have and maintain our 401k that matches our employees' contributions up to 6%. To me, that infrastructure is important. So I don't want to be pigeonholed.
Yeah, I think that was one of the early conversations that you and I had in your onboarding, was especially as Black business owners making the decision to scale versus kind of staying in this freelancer space, which can sometimes feel like less work, right? And the perspective, which was me, I think in the conversation, I was like, I don't know, I don't want no employees. I don't got time for
You
that.
did.
I got 11 kids, right? And I think that for me, it's definitely a season where I realized that I came out of a lot of management of people and community, and I kind of needed to cycle through that to be mom, right? Which is fine. But I think that what landed with me was more so the perspective and responsibility around how many lives you touch when you go beyond just kind of building this solo thing, right? And so when you start feeding other families, when you start impacting businesses that are impacting communities, right? And you think about kind of that domino effect of, if I did choose to take my talents and scale, I could really be more impactful, right? And I think that was something that is going to land for a lot of people that are listening to this, that are kind of teetering between, do I scale my business or do I play it safe? Do I keep my 50,000 revenue and just do what I do? So someone who's listening right now, if they're going through these podcasts, it's probably because they're considering applying, or we have another round of accelerators coming. What would you leave with them in terms of how they should be thinking about leveraging this experience?
Yeah. So one of the early sessions we had reminded us that your business is not your baby, it's your investment, right? And we also talked about, not I've long preached this, so this wasn't new for me. Why are you going into business? What's your why for doing business at all, and specifically this business? For me, I chose to go back into Third Eye Network instead of becoming somebody's commissioner or director of a government agency, or becoming some economic development corporation CEO, because I learned from a report that the Association for Enterprise Opportunity put out a couple years ago now. It's a little dated now, but these statistics don't normally change drastically in a few years. But back then, they were estimated to be 2.5 million Black owned businesses, 2.58 million Black owned businesses across the United States. 96% of them were solopreneurs. 96% of 2.58 million business owners that were Black, the only ones estimated in the country, were solopreneurs. After 5 years of operations, their average revenue per year, the average revenue for women owned businesses and men owned businesses, was about $50,000 a year. And we talk about freedom and we talk about building wealth. What is $50,000 a year going to do for you in this economy? The 4% that had employees and were Black owned, the women owned ones, where 51% or more were Black women owned, after 5 years did about $750,000 a year on average, which means some did more and some did less, just like the 50,000, some did more, some did less. The Black men owned, where 51% or more were Black men owned, did 1.6 million. Some did more, some did less. We talk about leaving a legacy. We talk about having an economic impact. We talk about raising the tax base. We talk about creating jobs. And then we settle for being solopreneurs and are not able to truly live a full life. Wealth is about whatever you care about being materialized. It can be health, it can be financial, it can be social, it can be cultural, it can be spiritual, it can be natural. Literally, like if you had a waterfall in your backyard and you get to walk out every day and see it, that gives you a different quality of life than someone who doesn't see grass. So whatever your wealth equation is, when you go into business and your business is an investment, it needs to drive you towards that wealth equation. I started out saying it takes a network to do work that matters. So being a solopreneur, I could not truly do work that matters for our people, for my family, or for my own self-actualization. So as folks are listening to this, thinking about, do they want to grow and scale, or do they want to be an AI-powered solopreneur with 12 AI employees and just kind of chill and just kind of stay themselves? They should think about their broader why factor, their wealth equation, and then what's the greatest path to allow them to achieve that equation.
I love that. This has been amazing. Of course, our time is limited once again, but I think that we've given listeners something to ponder on. For those of you all who are considering taking advantage of the Smart CEO programs, we encourage you to visit our website at TKC Smart CEOs. And then Lomax, if they want to learn more about Third Eye Network, where can they find you?
Sure. Certainly they can follow me online. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Facebook. I'm on IG. I'm most active on LinkedIn. I'm under my name, Dr. Lomax R. Campbell. On Facebook is Doc, D-O-C, Lomax R. Campbell. And of course, they can follow Third Eye Network for those same platforms, just searching Third Eye Network. And our website is www.thirdeye.network. thirdeye.network, all spelled out THIRDEYE.NETWORK.
Wonderful. Once again, guys, thank you for listening, and we will see you on the other side.
Thanks for listening to Smart Chat. Smart CEOs, you are on your way. We hope this episode has been fantastic for you. We are excited that you were here. So here's the deal. Follow us on all of our social media, look up the Kyra Company, and join us on all of our private platforms. We invite you to join our private Facebook group at the Smart CEOs. Jump in, join the conversation, and learn more about what we can do every day to grow our business and grow our community. Thanks so much for joining us. We're excited that you were here. Once again, I'm Kyra Hardwick, and you know it. I was thrilled to bring the Smart Chat to you. Take care. Talk to you soon.